everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Between Two Consultants. My name is Ethan Silvers.
And I am Nicholas Kelly.
And we are very excited today for a couple reasons. Number one, this is only the sixth or seventh time that we've had on two guests. So it's pretty rare and unique. We're excited about that. And we're going to be talking about a product that has been built by the folks on the screen. It is a COVID vaccination tracker. And we're going to go into the why and the how and the value of it. So why don't we quickly get started with introductions. Over to you, Justin.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ethan. My name is Justin. I'm a consultant in data and analytics, and I'm joined by Richard, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Richard. I'm a data engineer at Logic 2020. I've been working with data and data warehousing and in that realm for probably the last 20 years. So
that's actually the same age as Ethan, I believe.
Well, I mean, it's a couple years more than me. For those watching, I've aged very poorly, as you probably can tell. And
it's not the only problem.
And Nick, before we jump into it, like it was the excitement that Justin and Richard had when introducing themselves, that they're for being on Between Two Consultants. I felt it was overwhelming. Is that the right word?
It is. I think it was like one of our past guests, Kevin.
Yeah.
He was overcome with joy, probably.
Yeah. I mean, it's a high mark in their careers. So you're welcome, guys.
Cool.
So it was a career teleporter for me. So happy to be here.
That's right, a career teleporter.
Sure.
In the outtakes, we'll get more into that. So why don't we start with this? Justin, what is the product that we're going to be looking at today?
Yeah, so we're going to be demoing the COVID vaccinations tracker that aims to track the rollout of vaccinations across the US. The goal of which is to be able to see when we can go back to normal. Like, when will life start to return to a little bit of normalcy? When can I go to the bar, with my mates? And when can I, just experience, the joys of just being around other people? So everybody can see my screen. Is that right, Ethan?
Yeah.
So, one thing that we noticed that there's a lot of dashboards that are out there. But one thing that we noticed that they didn't do a great job of was answer some of the questions that a lot of people have with the rollout in terms of, how close are we getting to herd immunity, which is kind of our goal for that range of normalcy, which we're looking at around 70%. So right now we're at about 8.5%, which, don't get too discouraged. I'm sure it'll be there soon. But then you can see exactly which states are being effective in their rollout in terms of the percentage of the population that's been vaccinated. And you can see, Alaska is kind of leading the way here, but they're still only at 14%. So still only around 14% population vaccinated.
Is that because it's the first in the alphabet? Is it the first in the alphabet, Alaska, for the states?
I think Alabama might have it beat.
Yeah, okay. Now, I'm not from the U.S., so I can be.
I thought you were actually from Alabama based on the accent. I got it wrong. Sorry.
Yeah, you're probably lacking some refinement in the subtleties of accents there. You can.
So, Justin, sorry, we just had that brief interruption about Alaska versus Alabama, and we are by no means saying which state is better than the other. Were you gonna? Yeah, that's real nice. Talk us through what you're doing.
So, just hovering over, we can see kind of two metrics that we're really focused on. One, I mentioned what percentage of that population is vaccinated. The second is what percentage of the vaccines are distributed versus administered, to kind of get a sense of how effective each state is actually in rolling out the vaccines that they have available. So yes, Alaska has 14% of their population vaccinated, but still only distributing about 67% of the vaccines that we have available. And so this is all interactive. If we cared to look more into Alaska, you can see exactly what that looks like in terms of their population, as well as what rate are the vaccines increasing, or are they going to be administering more? In here, it looks a little, this is daily, so we're looking at daily vaccinations administered. And then we put on top like forecast to try and see if the trend is going to be moving upwards or downwards, or where are we headed and when this is going to start to hopefully increase. Ideally, you know, when I didn't click this before, but you'd like to see that going a little higher.
Nick, and I think that you had a hand in putting this together. Were there other things that we should be focusing on when we look at this?
Well, I think the interesting thing here is the process that we used, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But the temptation is to wait until like we can answer every possible question in relation to the rollout of the vaccine, and it's often what we end up doing in enterprise is let's wait for everything to be available, and let's wait for the stars to align basically. And so this is like a really quick turnaround dashboard, like we're talking days, and it's a way to elicit feedback. So this is there now. It's connected to relatively, I mean, the speed of the data refresh is fairly fast here, and it's the start. It's the start to the journey, and this can go in many different ways. And so hopefully we can talk a little bit about the process as well. But I think it's already a great start, and I find myself looking at this as well, just see how the rollout's going. And I was surprised to see that Alaska, like why is it that Alaska's top, and what are they doing? What decisions and actions are they taking that maybe some of the other states might look at? And of course, there may be none, because maybe the environment is different there. Maybe there's different reasons, different criteria, but it does at least open the door to further inquiry.
That is a surprisingly good transition. So now let's talk about how did it get built? Because we just transitioned to that seamlessly. How did it get built? And I think that this might be a good time, Richard. Just briefly, your role in this, and then what it looked like to get it created.
So as a data engineer, I'm in charge of getting the data, which makes sense. And so first we had to identify good sources and good sources that were updated frequently. And that's where we came up with, if you can see in the corner of the dashboard, it says OWID and GCP, which is Our World in Data and GCP, and they both aggregate data from sites like the CDC and other places. Now, the vaccination data comes from the OWID, and a lot of the population data comes from the Google Cloud Platform, which is what GCP stands for. And so we were able to combine those to be able to figure out, like, the percentage of the populations based on the numbers that, the numbers of people vaccinated as opposed to the numbers of people that are actually in each state. So, but we basically pulled directly from there. They're updated daily, so we get daily updates to the dashboard. And we pull the data into Power BI directly from the web. And so there's no, so it's always the latest data that's available when we refresh the dashboard. And it's all done in Power BI. There's no other process involved or other application involved in this. And then once I pulled the data, we basically set up the models to be able to, the data models to be able to, link, to figure out how to link the data between the two different data sets or data sources. So.
Thank you, Richard. And then, so that was the back end, and I think you started to touch on the front end. Justin, was with you doing more of the front end, anything you wanted to add?
I would just say, we really start with what questions we're trying to answer from the data. So what's top of mind and what's relevant, and then trying to think as we start there, get the KPIs that would help us answer that question, and then try and think of what action we might take from there. So, sometimes I just say I do the pretty visuals, but I think it's really about, being able to ask that question, tell a bit of the story and what you can actually do with this data.
Yeah.
Nick, do you have anything to add?
No, I think it's a great point. Like the visualization part can be sometimes assumed it is to make things look pretty, but it is the it's like the synthesis, or it's the distillation of the process that's gone into it up until then, like the business requirements. What are those questions need to get answered? And is the data available there to answer it? So all of that happens before any bit of code or any data is being accessed. All of this happens before that in order to get to the visuals.
Hey, Nick, could you talk with us a little bit about sort of the early pieces of this? You talk a lot about iterations and how you start with sort of an idea and then iterate on that. And then from there, you then start getting it more to the finished state. Help us understand a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So we tend to start with understanding objectives, of course, as any project should, but often projects don't. But we start with that. What are the strategic objectives? Why are we doing this? What's the point? Where's the value? And then aligned to that, who is going to benefit from this? What questions do they want to have answered? And then we interrogate the available data and say, well, okay, out of those, let's say 50 questions we want to answer, there's maybe 10 that we could reliably answer with the available data. And so that was like the process that we'd follow. Then we then quickly wireframe it to make sure, okay, well, is this what we wanted? And does it align with the strategic goals? And then we get into development. And then, of course, we can iterate through all of this. So, we can continue to iterate. This is the first iteration.
Got it. And are we, I think the intent, if we can get the access right, is to release this broadly. As people are watching this and playing with the dashboard, do us as a team have any requests for folks who are going to be leveraging this?
Yeah, let me take that one. It's a version 1. We'd love to get feedback. We'd love to see which direction it should go. So if you have any suggestions, anything you think, okay, well, there's this data source or that data source, or I'd love it answered question X or Y, whatever the case is, we'd love to hear it. And because we'll evaluate that and then see if we can put it into the next iteration. And given the longevity of the show, I think a concern here is that we'll probably be ended up on iteration 500-600 because it is a very well-lived show, often on cable. Anytime you turn on cable, we're on. So if it's the rerun, just bear in mind it might be on a very deep iteration of the dashboard at that time.
Yeah. And has our producer, has she booked us recently? Do we have any things coming up for the shows that we're going to be on?
I can't answer that. That's a huge. That's a knowledge management problem.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard like Johnny Carson and Lenny Bruce type stuff is where we're going to be on soon.
It's so massive of a challenge that it truly needs a robust knowledge management platform to be able to address answering that.
Yeah, it's something. So with that, we've talked a lot today about this tracker that we have, and I think the most impressive part is how quickly it was put together and the usefulness of the information. And I'm excited to get folks' comments about differences we can make to this and ways that we can enhance it. So really appreciate any comments that you have in there. And, as we were talking before, we'll probably be booked on things like Johnny Carson and Lenny Bruce in the near future. As always, I'll be talking with Nick offline about better ways to do transitions and continue to coach him up on that. So we have some things that we continue to look forward to. Nick, anything else we want to bring up before we end this segment?
Yeah, I'd just say we're going to continue to work on Ethan's personality and try and make him more likable.
It's a really low bar. Like, I think that I don't have to do that much to make myself a more likable human being.
Yeah, no comment.
So I'd like to thank Justin and Richard so much for coming on the show today. My name's Ethan Silvers.
I'm Nicholas Kelly.
Thank you again for joining us on Between Two Consultants. Take care.
Bye.